Presidential election results began trickling in, with some analysts saying the winner must win 25% of valid votes in at least 24 states of the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory. In fact, some thought, winning 25% of the votes in the Federal Capital Territory would be the deciding factor in who wins the election. Well, the president-elect clearly did not get 25% of the votes in the FCT. So is this a good enough ground to question the validity of the results?
Well, thank you very much. It's a very difficult situation, but I think the matter has been interpreted before, around 2008, in a matter involving the current president, Buhari, when he filed an action. The issue of whether that and in between, that is, must have 25% in two states and the Federal Capital Territory. I think the pronouncement then was that the and is conjunctively. That was the interpretation then. But it's about 14 years ago. It's enough time, maybe. The Supreme Court may have another look on it. But as of now, that is the interpretation the Supreme Court gave in 2008. I don't want to go into details because the matter is now sub judice. About some states have already filed an action to challenge the legality of the election. So I am confining myself to what was the interpretation of the Supreme Court in Buhari's case in 2008.
Okay,
the interpretation simply was that.
Sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to get some clarification, which I'm sure is what you're saying right now. So please proceed.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying I cannot go deep into the matter because already actions have been filed at the Supreme Court. And I'm just giving you an instance where there was an interpretation by the Supreme Court of that provision or a similar provision. The interpretation was that and federal capital should be construed conjunctively. In other words, it means you must get the 25% in 2 days, and also you must get 25% in the Federal Capital Territory. If you go by the interpretation of the Supreme Court in 2008. But I say, look, the Supreme Court have a right to depart from its previous decisions if the justice of the case demands so. So I don't know if they are confronted with similar interpretation, they will follow their own previous decision, or they might depart from their previous decisions. That's why I gave you that answer. But I will not go further because the matter is before the Supreme Court, and 6 states have already gone to court to have the election voided. Now, of course, the 2 political parties, PDP and Labour Party, also have commenced legal actions at the Presidential Tribunal, which is the Court of Appeal. So it will not be proper for me to go deep into the matter. And that's why I didn't even cite the citation, but it's a case I'm very sure was decided in 2008. It involved the current president, and a clear interpretation was given on that.
All right.
Because the position of the Supreme Court then and now are guidelines flowing from INEC have constitutional flavor. The guidelines flowing from INEC in the conduct of elections have constitutional flavor. Even in party politics, the Supreme Court has retaliated that party guidelines also ought to be obeyed. So how much with, not to talk of INEC guidelines, which flows directly from the Constitution, because they get the powers to enact, to issue out guidelines based on the power donated to INEC to conduct the election by the Constitution. if they have consistently issued guidelines alluding to the fact that the result will be transmitted live from the polling unit, not just here, all over, even at Chatham House, it will be a serious issue. They will have good reasons to tell the Supreme Court or to the Presidential Tribunal why they deviated from that guidelines. And they must also justify deviating from that guideline did not affect substantially the result of the election. But it's going to be an issue, not just an ordinary issue, but a very serious issue. Because the issue of others feeling that they have been misled, others feeling that there's improper motive behind the sudden change. Because if you have issued guidelines to the effect that results will be transmitted directly from the polling unit, and it becomes impossible, you have to also issue guidelines contraring that, varying the reasons why. But it does appear in this case that you are changing the goalpost in the middle of the game. That would be a little difficult to explain. But I've said these matters are before the court, and the court, Nigerian judiciary is courageous, very courageous enough to see whether that sudden change without notice created issues of transparency on the election. That will be a very great question to ask. The big question is, why did you keep drumming on that issue? They may have a reason, but until that reason is adduced, if at the trial and it becomes public, if not, the presumption will be obvious that something not right happened. Not right in favor of INEC or not right in in favor of the parties. Maybe INEC have a reason why they suddenly did that in the middle of the election. But I've said not transmitting the result as alluded by them consistently will be a serious issue. Thank you.